My name's Peter Keller. I'm chairing this next session entitled Core, Copper and Complexities. And it's my very great privilege to introduce the keynote speaker for the day in Lee Harrop. Now, Lee was born in Aotearoa, or New Zealand as we would know it, and now resides in Garamilla, or the Larrikia name for Darwin. She was awarded a PhD at Charles Darwin University in 2022 for her thesis titled The Normative Functions of Artist Intentions in a 21st Century Contemporary Art Practice. She is a Master of Fine Arts, First Class Honours from Whitecliffe College of Arts and Design in New Zealand. She's also an ecologically orientated artist and a researcher who enjoys working on collaborative, interdisciplinary projects. Her related research is published in traditional and non-traditional formats. She also maintains an extensive exhibition history and has won several prestigious awards, grants, and most recently a funded public art project in Darwin. For more than a decade, she has collaborated with geologists, core libraries and archives based in Perth, Kalgoorlie, Darwin, Canberra and Adelaide. She uses geological core samples in her arts practice, which have been publicly exhibited and won awards, acquired into public and private collections, and as she will discuss today, are contained in core library archives. There's the connection. Lee will discuss the benefits and impacts of collaborative art and science research projects, providing specific examples including her recent residency and ongoing collaboration with the staff and resources of the SA Core Library. I'd like you to welcome Lee Harrop to the stage.
Thank you for that welcome, Peter. And hello everyone, thank you for joining this presentation, and thank you to the Geological Survey of South Australia for this invitation. As nervous as I am, it's an absolute honour and privilege to be here in person from where I reside in Garamilla, Darwin, on unceded Larrikia land. I pay my respects to the ancestors and elders of that land, the land across Australia where I live and travel and work, and on the Kaurna land on which we meet today. Today's conference theme is Trends Come and Go, Geoscience is Foundational. One of the reasons acknowledgement of country is so important is because it's foundational to who we are. I was born and raised in Taranaki, Aotearoa, New Zealand, and that's foundational to who I am. Life is a journey full of trends taking us to places we could never have imagined, such as my journey from New Zealand to the top end of Australia, where I live with my partner and where we have made the decision to become citizens. The geological features of this country continue to shape who I am and the work I produce as an artist that combines my deep respect for the environment with a fascination and love of rock. When I received the invitation for this presentation, I reflected on the start of these geologically oriented art and science collaborations that began over a decade ago. From my experimental studio works with core samples through to the first collaboration with a core library as part of my PhD research titled Still Lives, A Beautiful Science. Today I'll share that project, then briefly skip through to my most recent and ongoing collaboration with the South Australia Drill Core Library, which is still in its infancy. A brief overview. Still Lives was an interdisciplinary art and science collaboration initiated by me and co-coordinated with theorist and author Dr. Jana Norman, who I'd also like to thank for being in the audience today. Jana's research interests in earth jurisprudence ignited conversations that led to this interdisciplinary partnership. The Still Lives project incorporated the disciplines of art, law, science, philosophy, and the humanities in a 3-day multi-platform platform event to engage with the key social and philosophical questions about the arts and sciences of mining. For example, what are the social values and narratives that justify and guide industrial-scale mining in countries like Australia? What do people involved in the discussion about mining know about the sciences and technologies used in mining? What are the values of the material byproducts and other outputs of mining activities? Are there misconceptions about mining and geosciences? What can artists and scholars in the humanities and law contribute to the debate about governance of mining practices? These and other questions were engaged with and creatively woven into the resultant artworks to stimulate the senses and provoke further inquiry. My decision to engrave words into core samples that would reflect the content of the rock necessitated the collaboration with geologists and petrologists to identify and understand that content. I chose to focus on rocks containing or likely to contain fossils, which also led to sourcing archived geological core samples from state-owned core libraries in WA and the Northern Territory. Over the course of the project, I worked collaboratively with these incredibly talented and incredibly generous individuals. The combined outputs of the practice-led research and interdisciplinary collaboration from Still Lives included 17 core samples, 17 engraved core samples, 1 sculpture book in sculpture in book format, 3 composed music scores that were performed at each of the 2 exhibition openings, artist talks, paper presentations, scholarly debate, and a forest bathing experience. Before I show those practice-led research outputs, I'll broadly define that term relating to non-traditional research methods. This slide lists examples of potential artistic outputs from the creative practice strategy used as research methods. The techniques used by artists through these outputs can build an interaction with the audience of the work, potentially impacting the broader community to engage with the cultural and social issues at the core of the artist's work. I'll show a practical example of these engagements shortly. The value of practice-led or non-traditional research methods is the ability of artists through their art to challenge social ideals, norms, and beliefs in a manner that shares new knowledge and encourages a reconsideration or reinterpretation of particular views and practices. And this can be the impetus for change. Noteworthy is that while these creative outputs are termed non-traditional in academia, recent scientific evidence suggests that the earliest forms of human creativity is at least 51,200 years old in the form of drawings and mark-making in rock, and the analysis by researchers suggests that the early drawings may have been used as a record and as communication of knowledge as opposed to purely expressive. So within this historical context, creative output can be understood as a foundational form of knowledge contribution. I combine practice-led research and research-led practice with other forms of academic inquiry, moving between each mode of research as necessary and dictated by the progression and outcomes produced by each areas of research. This slide shows some of the common methods used in research-led practice and that were achieved in Still Lives. The art exhibition in Still Lives were titled Ore Core Score and were shown across 2 Darwin venues as part of the Darwin Festival. This slide is of the flyer that I've included to give an example of the broad communication reach art and science collaborations can achieve, such as cross-institutional engagement and the ability to capitalise on large audiences within festivals. In deciding to use core samples as the material for the artworks in Still Lives, my aim was to raise the profile of core in terms of its geological and ecological values, thus disrupting the mechanisms typically used to value rock, such as the financial value of its mineral content, which we've heard about today. My objective in working with core generally is to preserve the valuable geological data contained within this material that could contribute information back to science 1,000 years from now. From the perspectives of government agencies in charge of core libraries, The value of core samples relates to their usefulness and potential for attracting private investment in resource exploration. Commentators in the field celebrate core as a fountain of knowledge, something that cannot be replaced with widgets and spreadsheets. And I've heard that term, look at the rock, in a couple of presentations today. I agree that drill core is irreplaceable and invaluable as a repository of geological history, and also as the empty void left behind after extraction. One of my artistic interventions in this project involved engraving words into core samples, exhibiting them in public, then returning them to the core libraries to be placed back into the archives for future discovery. I realised that returning the core would help preserve its geological value and in fact do more to raise the importance of valuing the material itself, that valuation being one of the ultimate aims of the project. Returning the core to the library also prevented a further layering of added financial value that might occur through its realisation as an artwork, so it wasn't made to be available for sale. I wanted the value of that rock to be recognised, not as value through financial investment or gain as an artwork. This slide shows venue 1 for the All-Core Score exhibition at Charles Darwin University. The 17 engraved core samples were displayed in 2 display cases. There was an information panel displayed on the wall nearby that detailed each core. An example of that information that was provided for each core is included in this slide as the image caption for the core sample on your right. The scientific detail in the form of geological information, such as the type of rock and its location and drill hole coordinates, takes the place of what would normally be listed as the medium of the artwork, so acrylic on canvas, for example. So in my usage, the scientific information is used to describe the visual representation. This strategy is employed as a way of communicating that the science is in the detail and the detail is the artwork. This is a detailed view of the larger display cabinet and one of those core samples from the cabinet enlarged on the right-hand side. This artwork, titled Warning, Facts, was shown at Venue 2, Piri Space. The book was open to the inside back cover, as shown here, with an accompanying digital monitor that allowed visitors to scroll through the inside pages. Warning, Facts, visually represents scientific data that was obtained from one geological core sample. A piece of that core that data relates to is embedded in the inside back cover. It serves as a reminder that every rock you pick up has a biography inside it that can be read as a kind of text. Geology explains the etymology of the world through these tangible lithic bodies that have witnessed deep time directly, which has shaped our planet, built mountains, and enabled life. In contrast, to quote Marcia Jeannerud, over human timescales, our disruption of geography will haunt us. Soil lost to erosion, coastal areas claimed by the sea, and mountaintops sacrificed on the altar of capitalism won't be restored in our lifetime. And these alterations will set in motion a cascade of side effects, hydrologic, biological, social, economic, and political, that will define the human agenda for centuries. In other words, thoughtless disregard for the work of the geologic past means we cede control of our own future. I've included a QR code for the e-version of this book that you're welcome to capture on your mobile device, and I'm going to try and flip through a few pages as I continue the presentation. My ontological understanding of the material and relevance of any meaning to the issues of contemporary society are dependent on the contemporary scientific and situated knowledge sources. In the ontology of the material I adopt, linguistic terms such as words and text I embed into the artworks count as material entities. Part of my ability to make social contributions as an artist to social topics, such as the impact of mining on the environment, is dependent on my capacity to critically examine and be informed about scientific evidence. I side with the tradition of writers and philosophers who assert that we have a moral duty to distinguish sense from nonsense, especially in today's world. Pseudoscience can cause harm and have severe consequences, as we know. And I do not present my artworks as science, but rather as an act of communication that can be rigorously informed by science, ensuring that the intended meaning has proven explanatory power. In other words, it is imperative that the messages I'm communicating are underpinned by evidence-based facts, especially if I'm to avoid promoting misleading information and propaganda. If we can go back to the slide, thanks. For the All-Core Score exhibition, composer Kathy Applegate created a work for 2 pianos with audio sampling in 3 parts titled Stardust, Ancient Oceans and Subterranean. These were performed at the exhibition openings at both venues. Again, feel free to capture that QR code if you'd like to listen to the 3 musical pieces after the presentation. Kathy and Chen Wei attracted a large audience of music lovers to both events, increasing the numbers of visitors to engage with the project. Subsequently, At the Core was featured on an ABC radio interview and was performed at the Landscapes Music of Australian Composers concert, where I was also invited to briefly speak about our Still Lives collaboration. Here is an image of the engraved core samples being returned back into the core library archives for future discovery. To summarise this project, Still Lives had at its core, pun intended, the question of how we value rock. Central to opening up new possibilities was the interdisciplinary and collaborative approach that presented innovative and creative accounts of what rock can embody. Art and science joined forces to represent geological core samples through an art platform in a manner that refocused attention on their material, rock, the context they embody, mining, and their origin, earth. The result was an aesthetic, multisensory, factual embodiment aimed at disrupting preconceptions concerning which subjects can have intrinsic value, thus opening up the possibility for reinterpretation of how we might value subjects such as rock. That is, I contend, a contribution that is indicative of art's potential in contributing to the larger and most urgent task of reshaping our behaviour towards our environment, thus affirming art's contribution beyond society. In January this year, I undertook a 3-week residency at the South Australia Dual Core Library as part of my research for the Mapping Shadows of the Bight project, led by Dr. Jana Norman as part of her Alfred Deakin Postgraduate Fellowship awarded by Deakin University, which focuses on the region of the Great Australia Bight. My line of research developed during the MSB pilot residency in 2023 in a collective of 6 arts and humanities academics from across several universities who are listed in the image caption. We travelled over 2,000 kilometres in 6 days to field test ideas and new methodologies for place-based research. The impact of that experience served to disrupt habitual ways of doing research that, according to Potter et al., rehearsed the epistemic violence inherent in colonial methods of exploration, extraction, and discovery. This image and the one on the next slide are from a series of images that document a methodology of encounter during the mobile residency. The creative processing of my field notes included sharing the images and titles within our group, retrospective encounters, conversations and ideas, coalesced and developed, contributing to the final creative outputs. This collaborative process is acknowledged through citation of the members in the image captions. This extremely abridged overview of the MSB project is to provide some background context that led to my South Australia Core Library residency and collaboration. Following the field trip, the MSB Collective had a panel discussion at the Cultural Studies Association of Australasia Conference at the University of South Australia in December 2023. Subsequently, we were invited to publish our papers in a special edition of the journal Continuum. My contribution to the MSB project through the Core Library residency brings a new art and science collaboration that creates space for cross-disciplinary and interdisciplinary engagement with the geological material related to the Great Australian Bight. One of my research outputs created during the residency is an engraved, archived core sample from the Fowler region, drilled in 1987, that can only be viewed by retrieving the tray via the standard request to view process. The work has been created in a way that will encourage viewers to pick it up, revealing the underside, the shadow place. The inaugural viewing of the artwork took place in April this year, after a request from Matthew Flinders Distinguished Professor Margaret Davies and her colleague Dr. Rhys Aston. The event included a group discussion about the project, the ongoing collaborative contributions, and the associated paleoanalysis. This event is just one example of the ongoing trajectory of these works and their participation in important discussions, where I have both the opportunity to extend my knowledge and to also share and contribute to these important conversations. The ultimate validation of the importance of these events came from the following feedback from Professor Davies, quote, "I couldn't have imagined in advance the incredibly rich intellectual and multidisciplinary experience. We learnt so much and we're really blown away by the place and the generosity of everyone engaging with us in such depth. What a fantastic opportunity, probably the most stimulating and informative experience I've had in my entire academic career of over 30 years. And I reiterate Professor Davies' comments regarding the generosity of the Core Library staff, and Bronwyn highlighted that this morning. The people were so incredibly welcoming, friendly, inclusive, genuinely curious and interested, and very charitable in their knowledge sharing. And the whole project would not have been what it was if it wasn't for that support. And I thank those staff. One of my biggest, as mentioned, this project is ongoing. The residency allowed for a concentrated research and collaborations that will be developed and extended. In particular, I'm really excited about Liliana's paleoanalysis, and you can see a slide of that here, which is an interesting new area for me, and I'm really looking forward to a potential collaboration to share her research. One of my biggest challenges is finding funding for these projects. My residency was self-funded and included in-kind support from the Geological Survey of South Australia. Some shameless self-promotion here to you all. I would happily receive any financial contribution to enable this research project to continue, and can be contacted via email, or please come and see me after this presentation. And also, I'm seeking a donation of 1,609 metres of core for a separate 2025 project. So come and see me if you have any contacts, or you have some in a shed that you don't know what to do with. In closing, I hope I've demonstrated how art can bring new knowledge in innovative, dynamic and creative ways to a much broader audience. And I leave you with three key take-homes. That non-traditional research methods in the arts have the capacity to build social engagement beyond the artistic practice. That social impact can be seen in interactions and engagements, such as exhibitions, workshops and discussions that go beyond the academic forums. That art has great explanatory power that can explicate and elucidate complex and difficult concepts. Thank you.